Imagine your own mother shaving her head, looking you straight in the eye, and telling everyone she's dying of cancer. The tears, the scarves, the sympathy cards, every detail staged so precisely you can almost feel her fear. But then, imagine discovering it was all a lie, that she did it, not for pity, not for attention, but out of pure jealousy. Because she couldn't stand watching you, her daughter, finally succeed. Sounds like something from a bad movie, doesn't it? Well, it happened to me, and when the truth finally came out, I made sure the entire town saw the monster who'd been hiding behind that sad little scarf, if you've ever dealt with someone toxic in your own family, the kind who smiles at you while quietly plotting your downfall. Yeah, this one's going to sting. My name's Janet, and this is the story of my mother, Olivia. Growing up, I assumed all mothers were like mine, a little sharp, a little competitive, full of backhanded comments passed off as tough love. Only later, as I started to meet other people's parents, did I realize most moms actually want their kids to win. Mine wanted to make sure I never got ahead of her. Olivia didn't just compare herself to me. She treated my every success like a personal insult, as if my achievements were proof she'd failed somehow. When I graduated from architecture school with honors, she didn't clap or cry or say she was proud. She just rolled her eyes and said, "College degrees don't mean much in the real world. Janet, don't get a big head." When I landed a prestigious internship, her only response was a muttered, "Some girls get everything handed to them," and I believed her. For years, I genuinely thought maybe I was just lucky, that my hard work didn't count for anything, that I didn't fully deserve the things I earned. Everything shifted when I got my dream job, an actual position at Peterson & Associates, one of the top architecture firms in Chicago. I was 26 and finally starting to feel like I belonged in my own life. My boss, Nathan, saw something in me. My coworkers respected my designs. I was shaping real projects, the kind that would stand for decades. When I called my mom to share the news, I expected maybe, just maybe, some happiness. Instead, I got silence. Then, "Chicago?" she said. "That's awfully far from home." "Mom, it's 3 hours away," I said, laughing lightly. "I can come by on weekends." "Don't get too comfortable, Janet," she said finally. "Pretty girls like you always get replaced. These fancy firms chew you up and spit you out." That word, pretty girls, stuck. What did she mean by women like you? Why did success have to be something ugly between us? She never explained, but the venom in her tone said enough. 6 months later, when I proudly showed her the little gray Honda Civic I'd bought after years of saving lunches and skipping nights out, she ran her manicured finger along the hood and said, "Must be nice." Not all of us had life handed to us on a silver platter. That's when it hit me. This wasn't criticism. It was envy, and envy is far greedier than hate. I stopped telling her about promotions or projects. I shortened our calls until "Hi, Mom" and "Love you" were the longest sentences between us. When a coworker asked why I never mentioned family, I just shrugged and said, "We're not that close." It was easier than saying, "My mom doesn't want me to be happy." 8 months passed, blissfully quiet. My little Chicago apartment became a sanctuary. I was leading my first major design, a community center for underprivileged kids. Nathan trusted me to run the team, and for the first time in my life, I woke up excited to go to work every day. And then came the call. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I almost let it go to voicemail, but that late-night timing set off a warning bell in my chest. "Janet." My mom's voice cracked through the speaker. Small, fragile. "Honey, I need to tell you something." My stomach nodded instantly. Olivia had never sounded helpless. "Mom, what's wrong?" "I went to Dr. Peterson last week for some tests," she whispered. "The results came back today. Janet, I have cancer." The world fell silent. My breath stalled. We'd clashed 1,000 times, but she was still my mother, my only parent since Dad died when I was 15. What kind of cancer? What stage? What did the doctors say?" Her words floated through quiet sobs. "It's bad, honey. They're talking about aggressive chemo. I don't know if I can do this alone." I didn't even pack properly. By the next evening, I was off a plane and running into her arms at the airport. She looked fragile, older than I'd ever seen. Her skin was pale, eyes rimmed in red, every movement slow and careful. Oh, Mom, I whispered, hugging her tight. We'll fight this. Together. Over the next 2 weeks, I saw her turn from the sharp-tongued woman I grew up with into someone heartbreakingly delicate. She'd sit at the kitchen table, staring out the window at nothing, voice quivering as she said things like, I keep thinking about all the things I'll never see. Your wedding, the grandkids. I wasted so much of our time being angry. It broke me completely. I called Nathan and told him I couldn't handle work right now. He was kind, said I could work remotely, maybe part-time. But every time Mom groaned in pain or sighed my name, my heart twisted. I quit. I left my dream job to move back home because blood must come first, right? Then came the morning she walked into the kitchen bawled. I was half asleep pouring coffee when I heard her footsteps. I turned and the mug crashed to the floor. Mom! Oh my God, what happened? She clutched her bare scalp and started crying. The chemo, she sobbed. It was falling out in clumps. I couldn't stand seeing it. So, I shaved it. She pulled a soft pink scarf from her pocket and shakily tied it around her head. The doctor said this would happen, but I didn't think it'd be so soon. I ran to her, hugged her, cried into her shoulder. Seeing her like that shredded something inside me. You're still beautiful, I told her. We'll get through this. Within days, the neighborhood knew. Deborah from next door spotted her getting the mail in that scarf and showed up with a casserole. Victoria from church dropped by with a basket of flowers. The sympathy spread faster than wildfire. Olivia could barely keep up with the attention. The cards, the meals, the messages. And she played the part flawlessly. Every time she lifted something a little too heavy, she'd let out a pained little groan. If someone asked how she was doing, she'd give a brave smile. One day at a time, she'd say softly, and everyone would melt. For the first time in her life, people adored her. She glowed under their worship. And then the cracks began to show, small hairline fractures in her story that I almost missed. It started with the pills. She kept all her medications in a wicker basket by the kitchen counter, and one afternoon I offered to organize them. I'll set up a weekly dispenser, I said, picking up the first bottle. But the label was torn and faded, almost impossible to read. Mom, I called, frowning. I can't make out this name. Should I call the pharmacy to double-check what medication it is? She looked up from her spot on the couch, expression flickering just a little too fast before she answered. Tranquilizer, she said quickly. She snatched the bottle from my hand so quickly that I was startled. No, don't worry about it. I have it memorized. But something about her reaction felt wrong. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention. The medication bottles were all from Differentes. Some of the labels looked years old, and when I quietly checked one while she was in the bathroom, I found nothing but generic multivitamins inside. Then there were the phone calls with her doctor. Yes, Dr. Williams, she'd say into the phone, making sure I could hear from the kitchen. The nausea is getting worse. What? Increase the dose? Are you sure that's safe? But one afternoon when she thought I was taking a nap, I heard her talking in a completely different tone. Heather, you need to make your voice deeper. Janet almost figured it out last time. Yes, I know it's crazy, but just play along for a few more weeks. Heather. My mother's hairdresser was named Heather. I felt sick to my stomach, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Surely my mother wouldn't fake cancer. That was unthinkable. Monstrous. The final proof came 3 weeks later, completely by accident. I was looking for stamps in my mother's purse when my fingers found a crumpled piece of paper shoved deep in the side pocket. I almost threw it away without reading it, but something made me smooth it out. It was a to-do list written in my mother's handwriting. Fundraiser planning. Order flyers with bald photo. Contact Pastor Jeremy about church announcement. Call Peter at the community center about hall rental. Write speech. Remember to cry about leaving Janet behind. Daughter equals leverage. Cry about sacrifice. My hand started shaking. I read it 3 times, hoping I was misunderstanding. But there it was in black ink. Daughter equals leverage. Everything clicked into place. The mysterious medications. The fake doctor calls. The perfectly timed bald head reveals. The convenient timing that pulled me away from my successful career in Chicago right when I was about to get promoted. My mother wasn't dying. She was performing. And I was here and willing co-star in the most twisted show imaginable. But I needed to be sure. That night, when she was resting, I confronted her as gently as possible. Mom, I've been thinking. You haven't told me which hospital you're getting treatment at. Maybe I could come to your next appointment. I'd like to meet Dr. Williams. The mask slipped for just a moment. Her eyes flashed with something cold and calculating before she caught herself. "That's not necessary, Janet. You're already doing so much. I insist. As your daughter, I have a right to know what's happening with your treatment." That's when she hissed like a snake. "If you had stayed in Chicago, you would have forgotten all about me, wouldn't you? You'd be too busy with your fancy job and your new friends to care if your mother lived or died. This way, you're stuck here where you belong. Don't think you're better than me just because you have some college degree." The venom in her voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard. This wasn't my dying mother speaking. This was the real Olivia. Jealous, manipulative, and willing to destroy her own daughter's life to feel important. "You're not sick," I whispered. She laughed. Actually laughed. "Prove it." That's when I decided she was about to get exactly what she deserved. My mother had already been planning the fundraiser for weeks. She'd ordered professional flyers with her bald photo and a heartbreaking story about a single mother fighting for her life. She'd convinced Pastor Jeremy to announce it during Sunday service. She'd even contacted the local newspaper to run a feature story about her brave battle. The night of the fundraiser, the community center was packed. I watched from the back as neighbors, church members, and even strangers filled every seat. There were elderly couples who'd driven from 3 towns over, teenagers who'd pulled their allowance money, small business owners who donated gift certificates for the silent auction. My mother took the stage wearing a beautiful scarf that Victoria from church had crocheted for her. Under the warm lights, she looked fragile and ethereal, like an angel preparing to fly away. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice trembling with just the right amount of emotion. 6 months ago, I thought my biggest worry was an empty nest. My daughter Janet had moved to Chicago for a wonderful job opportunity, and I was so proud of her success. She paused to dab her eyes with a tissue, but then the doctors gave me news that changed everything. Stage 4 cancer, aggressive treatment, an uncertain future. The hardest part wasn't facing my own mortality. It was the thought that I might leave this world without having spent enough time with the people I love most. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. But then something beautiful happened. My darling Janet gave up her dream job and moved home to take care of me. She sacrificed her future so I wouldn't have to face this battle alone. Thunderous applause filled the room. People were openly crying. I watched as they lined up to drop checks and cash into the donation boxes, their faces full of compassion for this brave woman and her selfless daughter. When the donations were tallied, the total was staggering, $23,000. That's when I stood up. "Excuse me," I called out, walking toward the front of the room. "Before we close tonight, I'd like to share something with everyone." My mother's face went pale, but she couldn't stop me without causing a scene. "Mom, could you help me with this projector? I put together a little presentation about your journey." The first slide appeared on the screen. Official letterhead from Chicago General Hospital stating, "No patient by the name Olivia Martinez has been treated at this facility." Infused murmurs rippled through the crowd. The second slide, a screenshot of phone records showing multiple calls to Dr. Williams, except the number belonged to Heather's hair salon. People started looking at each other with dawning horror. The third slide, security camera footage from a local wig shop, showing my mother laughing and joking with the sales clerk while purchasing scarves and trying on different styles. But I wasn't done. I pulled out the crumpled to-do list and read it aloud. Daughter equals leverage, cry about sacrifice. The silence in that room was deafening. Then someone in the back shouted, "She's a fraud!" Others started demanding their money back. Pastor Jeremy looked like he might faint. My mother tried to maintain her act for about 30 seconds before the rage took over. "You ungrateful little bitch!" she screamed, her voice strong and healthy. "I gave you everything. I raised you alone after your father died, and this is how you pay me?" The crowd was stunned. This wasn't the weak, dying woman they'd come in to support. This was someone else entirely. "You were going to abandon me in Chicago," she continued, completely exposing herself. "Living your perfect life while I sat here alone? I had to make you come home. I had to remind you where you came from." Security had toe-scored her out as people demanded refunds and threatened to call the police. The fallout was swift and brutal. By the next morning, fraud complaints had been filed with the police. The local newspaper ran a front-page story about the cancer con artist. Social media exploded with angry posts from people who donated their hard-earned money to a lie. My mother was forced to refund every single penny to avoid criminal charges. Her reputation in our small town was destroyed overnight. Neighbors crossed the street to avoid her. The church banned her from all activities. Even Heather, her hairdresser accomplice, publicly apologized and refused to serve her. But the most beautiful part, when I called Nathan to explain what had happened, he didn't just offer me my old job back. He offered me a promotion. Turns out the way I'd handled the situation impressed him. Anyone who can expose fraud with that level of evidence and composure, he said, is exactly the kind of person we want leading our investigative design team. I moved back to Chicago within the month. My mother's bald head started growing back patchy and uneven, fitting for someone whose slies were finally catching up with her. She sits alone in that house now with no audience for her performances and no daughter to manipulate. Do I feel guilty? Not for a single second. Because while her cancer was fake, her jealousy was real. Her willingness to destroy my dreams was real. Her manipulation andlies were real. I refused to let her kill the life I'd worked so hard to build. And sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. If this story taught you anything, let it be this. Toxic people will use any weapon they can find, even fake illnesses, to control your life. But you have the power to expose the truth and take back control. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in standing up to manipulative people. And let me know in the comments. Have you ever dealt with someone who tried to sabotage your success? Justice isn't always served by the courts. Sometimes you have to serve it.